Hey, it's a Humble Collector here, and in today's video we're doing another unboxing. I have been super busy the past few months, so it's been like 2+ months-ish worth of stuff here. Admittedly, as you can probably imagine, 90+% of this is death cards, but we do actually have a lot of photos that came in. One of the packages has a few letters in addition to a death card, and the final package is a book completely unrelated to World War I and World War II, but I thought it was kind of neat. So we'll go ahead and get started with the items that I had to unbox prior to the video, starting with the death cards. This is kind of an interesting one for Josef Bickelmeyer here, who was an Unteroffizier in an infantry regiment, bearer of the Iron Cross, 1st and 2nd class, veteran of the campaigns in France and Russia, who died December 13th, 1941, in the fighting in the East after being wounded. Now, what's interesting here, at least to me, on the photo we have of Josef, we can very clearly see the very crudely drawn-on Iron Cross ribbon and then the rather lopsided EK1 that's been added there. So I talk a little bit sometimes about soldiers that have uniforms painted on in their death cards. We also see cases where like awards have been added, and this is a great example of that. So I just thought that was pretty neat. And we have a stack of other death cards here. So this one is for Franz Xavier Zeiler, who's an Obergefreiter in a Panzer Regiment, veteran of the campaigns in Poland, France, and Russia. Bear there in Cross 2nd class, and the Verdienstkreuzes. Now, that is a reference to the War Merit Crosses. It's interesting because I don't see them worded that way. This roughly translates to Crosses of Merits. That is also kind of unusual. We see here that he was killed January 22nd, 1945 at Ostrowo, Poland, after 5.5 years of service. So Franz here, take 1945 minus 5.5 years, joins the military mid-1939. So, joins the military right at the beginning of the war and, was killed just a few months before the end. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. These cards in particular always stand out to me just to imagine, having survived the entire war just to die a few months before the end. The next card that we have here is for Josef Dieber, who was born October 11th, 1910, died July 1946 in a Russian POW camp in Taganrog. Now, what's interesting about Josef's card here, as you can see, is he's wearing a transitional helmet. That is a World War I era helmet that is being put into use by the German military during World War II. You don't see those very often in photographs, so it's always cool to see. And given the fact he died in 1946, of course, as a post-war card, we don't see any of the standard Iron Crosses or things like that we see during the war itself. Next card that we have here is for Georg Meyer, who was a soldier in an infantry regiment, fell in August 1944. Now, this is very interesting. This Befreiungskampfen here is unusual because that translates roughly to liberation fighting or liberation battle. Now, generally on death cards, when we see wording like this, usually it's in reference to defensive fighting, things like that. So the fact that we have the liberation battle here, I'm assuming that Georg's family wasn't particularly fond of the war, perhaps. At least that's the way it looks to me. It's very, very interesting inclusion. We can see he's actually buried at Fort de Montmaison in South France, which I'm not too familiar with. But yeah, very cool early post-war card there. Next up, we have Willy Schmidt, who is an Oberleutnant and company commander in a motorized infantry regiment, who fell on August 8th, 1941 in the fight against Bolshevism. And we can see his EK1 there as well as his infantry assault badge, which is very cool. Another bit of an unusual card format for Walter Cade here. He's a grenadier, fell on September 22nd, 1944 in Letland. But yeah, the rows of crosses along the sides and also the form of the card itself is very strange. It's longer than I would expect given the width. I don't know. I've handled so many death cards over the years, it just struck me as kind of odd. But definitely period. I already looked at it under a jeweler's loop. Next up here we have Franz Xavier Ertl, who is a Watchmeister in an artillery regiment, veteran of the campaign in France, who fell near Woloshok on October 7th, 1941, at the age of 26. Franz Reis, who was a Confederate in a Grenadier Regiment, a veteran of the campaign against the Soviet Union, buried the Iron Cross Second Class and the Infantry Assault Badge in silver, who died after being heavily wounded on October 30th, 1943, in a field hospital northwest of Gamel. And next up here we have the card for Obergefreiter Albert Engelmeyer, who, after being heavily wounded in the East on January 23rd, 1944, died at the age of 21. So we have a bit of an interesting card here. So we have a card for two individuals, Wilhelm Schmeiser and Hansel Espertshuber. So I've seen this before. Usually that means that one of these two was like adopted, or maybe they were close cousins. Like usually there's some kind of family relationship outside of the last names there, which is always kind of neat to see. Wilhelm here, as we can see, is wearing his assault gun wrap, and we can see he's a Gefreiter in a Panzer regiment who fell on July 3rd, 1944 in Mulavodi at the age of 23. And then Hansel there was a Gefreiter in an artillery regiment who fell on August 10th, 1944 in the East at the age of 18, and is buried at the cemetery in Relodziec. Not sure where that is. Also, kind of interesting, like floral-ish print on his shirt there. I don't really recall seeing that on any other death cards. That's kind of neat. And then we have the card here for Heinrich Leidenbach, who died while being transported home on November 2nd, 1946 in Frankfurt. So yeah, this is the second or third card I think I've come across for a soldier that died while coming home from a Russian POW camp. Obviously, conditions in those camps weren't great, so odds of him probably having an illness on the way home and then just the strain of the journey, unfortunately, was too much for him. Yeah, pretty interesting card. And then the last one of the pre-opened ones here is for Michael Fritz, who was born September 11, 1914, became a priest in 1939, and died in a Russian POW camp in 1947. So another post-war card there. Now, one of the interesting things of this video is I also have a lot of photos here that came from a fellow collector. So I bought these knowing it was a lot of about 40 photos. I knew that there was like a couple of SS photos in here. There was like some Kriegsmarine stuff. But I didn't know too much beyond that. And there's actually some really cool photos in here. So first one actually is this group photo of these Kriegsmarine guys. They show up in a few other photos. We can actually see the Minesweeper badge there, and then actually the guy on the far right here has an Iron Cross First Class as well, which is kind of unusual to see on a naval uniform. Have this photo of a bunch of German soldiers on a boat, unfortunately not captioned. Another photo of a few guys in the field, 1940. I think we have just a photo there. I'm not sure where this large church, government building, I'm not really sure what that is, but I think it shows up in a few of the other photos as well. Have a nice snow photo here, a bunch of guys in greatcoats, unfortunately uncaptioned. Have this one here for November 9th, 1941, and is Sonntag Morgen, is that Sunday morning? Curious to translate that whole thing. Yep, another group photo here. A group photo with some civilians. These same Kriegsmarine guys, we can actually see the EK1 again, and then I don't know my Kriegsmarine rates very well, so I can't tell what that patch is. It's rather faded out photo here. Photography Studios mark. This is a really neat photo postcard for sitting in front of a sign that says Alarmplatz. Another nice studio postcard for a Luftwaffe member there. Another photo. This one is actually captioned. dated to 44. Is that Poland? Yeah, taken in Poland, October 5th, 1944. Yeah, that photo is very dark. I can't really tell what's going on there, but it looks like maybe a couple guys sitting around a table eating. Unfortunately, uncaptioned. Here's the Kriegsmarine guys again. Nice parade photo there with some trucks, some cars. Captioned, but unfortunately covered up by the photo album remnant there. We have a road in Russia. You see photos like this a lot with the conditions at the end of the winter when the spring comes. Everything kind of just turns to mud. It's pretty neat. Too bad it's not captioned. A lot of booze. A lot of booze in that photo. Is that champagne mostly, it looks like? So they're about to have a party. Another nice snow photo there. Nice binoculars, too. Not captioned. Got those Kriegsmarine guys again. This one. Yeah, Bohm, Keller, Dalo, and Demlin, maybe? Huh. These two guys walking. We have infantry assault badges there. And probably their names. Another outside photo. Actually, some neat barbed wire setup there. Yep, another portrait photo. Another portrait photo. Actually, you can see the dragon's teeth in the background there. I wonder where that was taken. Yeah, this looks like the same place. That big building with... oh, are those not dragon's teeth, or are those just shrubs? Huh. Curious, if anybody knows what that is, let me know. We have another group photo here. This is actually one of the SS photos. We can see the SS Eagle on the sleeve there. Uncaptioned. Another city shot here. Unfortunately, it's rather blurry. This is a really neat photo. A, it's very clear, but B, we have a Luftwaffe guy. Apparently he's broken his arm. He's lying in bed. And then on the back, yeah, caption, unfortunately, I can't read it. But yeah, I just think that's a really neat photo. Another group shot there. It's probably the same palace complex as the last one. Is that Versailles, maybe? I don't know. I should know, but I don't. Sitting on a bench over there. Kind of an unusual photo. Another group shot here. These are also SS guys. I don't see a cuff title. Well, maybe? Is that a cuff title? I don't think so. But yeah. SS group there. Captioned, but I can't read that. Look, Herman, Carl, maybe? Yeah, not really sure. Photo with a car there. That's pretty neat. I don't know what that... Is that a camera, maybe? Yeah, it's a camera, I think. I wonder if that's a propaganda team. Very interesting. These guys all in their dress uniforms here. Yeah, another group shot. So those Kriegsmarine guys again. Attention out in the snow. Yeah, we got greatcoats. This must be an early photo because I see the national shield there. And these rubber bands that some of these guys have on their helmets are used for sticking camouflage in. Granted, because generally the thought was you could pull foliage off whatever forest you're hiding in or bush or whatever and stick it in there to give yourself like some camouflage from the area. However, given the fact that this is clearly winter and there's no greenery anywhere. I don't know how useful that would be in this case, but a lot of those guys seem to have it. Unfortunately not captioned. Little rowboat there. All right, this is another cool photo of a Stug and its crew. We can actually see that the one guy there has the wound badge, and is that the General Assault badge? Yeah, I think that's the General Assault badge. It's pretty neat. Another photo with all the rifles stacked up there. Got two guys standing guard outside of a medical building, maybe? Or no, that's four, not a cross. Some kind of barracks, probably. Got two guys in their dress uniforms. Another Luftwaffe guy. Soldiers eating out in the field. You see photos of this a lot. Another field photo. Everybody's wearing their... oh, it looks like they're up in the mountains somewhere, maybe? Or this is a Geberg's unit. 1944 in Crimea, so Crimea, 1944. Somebody's got to know where that is. I have no idea what that building is. You have two guys with the car, and then you got the horse-drawn wagon in the background. Germany's logistics train was largely horse-powered during the war. Soldiers at attention at some sort of training ground, it looks like. Oh, we have a cemetery photo here. Fortunately, no names are really visible. Now here are the Kriegsmarine guys again. Now this is a really neat photo in my opinion. So this is another SS photo. As you can tell by the eagle on the sleeve and the cuff title here. But it appears to be some sort of like artillery observer group, it looks like. So they have the big artillery spotting scopes. Very neat. And it is captioned to 44. So I might be able to research that one. I'll have to look into it more in the future. Got some soldiers hiding with, looks like some kind of light flat gun there. Peeling potatoes, looks like. Another portrait photo. Another portrait photo. Another group photo eating. Mittergrast and Bochum in the Saar. Looks like they're getting ready to move out somewhere. They got all their packs. Again, it looks like winter. Looks like it's an airfield with some old biplanes in the background. Interesting. Looks like a tropical uniform on that guy. Got a family photo here. It looks like her. One soldier and 5 women. He looks very uncomfortable. There's a dog there, too. Pilots. I'm guessing that's similar to that other photo earlier at that airfield. These guys walking through the woods. This guy's got a EK1 infantry assault badge. This guy also has an infantry assault badge. Yep, June of 1944, it looks like. Unteroffizier Lager, Kirchen, and Beck, maybe? Interesting. More the Kriegsmarine guys there. Nice close-up of two of them. Luftwaffe studio portrait. dated to 11/11. It looks like 06, but that can't be right. Huh. And then the last photo here is another portrait photo in dress uniform. So yeah, a pretty interesting lot of photos. Like I said, bought more or less blind. So definitely some really neat ones in there. Some I'll have to research in the future. I know my photo videos seem to be fairly well liked. I don't do as many of them as I should. I'm going to hopefully correct that going into the new year. But yeah, moving on to the actual unboxing now. And this is one of the ones that the seller actually did some research beforehand. As a death card for Thomas Koltenecker here, who is a Gefreiter at a machine gun company, buried the Iron Cross second class in the Assault Badge, who was killed on June 16th, 1942 in the fighting southeast of Tobruk, so North Africa card. And from the seller's research, Thomas here was actually a member of the 1st Company of Schutzen Regiment 104 and was killed at El Duda. So pretty neat there. I don't get too many cards in for members of the North African campaign. And moving on to the next one. All right. We have the death card here of Vincent Shooter, who was a soldier in Grenadier Regiment, died February 10th, 1944, at the age of 28. Very nice HCOM 309 back in there. Now, this one came in a mailer, and I was able came in a mailer. There was an envelope inside the mailer. So yeah, there is a pretty interesting death card here for actually 2 death cards. One for Georg Meyer, who's died February 21st, 1939. So pre-war there. And then this one here for Ignaz Fleckinger, who was a soldier in infantry regiment and was a cleric in the Capuchin Order, actually, before the war, who died June 5th, 1940, at the age of 21. And I don't know if these photos and letters are tied to either of these guys. I think this might have just been a put-together lot. But yeah, but in the letters here is actually kind of a neat, this one in particular. Looks to have been sent by a child in 1940, and then we have this nice little, like, Christmas branch there. Just thought that was kind of neat. And then the letter here is from November 3rd, 1941, and then this other piece here isn't dated. Oh, it is dated, actually. 1940. All right, moving on to the next card here. And we have a sales invoice. And then, yeah, we have the card here for Alphonse Menard, who was a soldier in Geberg's Artillery Regiment, who died September 10th, 1943, on the Italian front, which is pretty interesting. And somebody added some pencil text there. But, yeah, Menard. And then, I don't know what that other word would apply to. Zambelblonig? I don't really know. But still, pretty interesting card. And another sales invoice here. This is the card of Goddard Kopf, who was a Matrosen Obergefreiter, who died a seaman's death on April 13th, 1945 in the Adriatic. So, I've been trying to get more Kriegsmarine cards, because they're pretty interesting, and I know I've only covered 2 on the channel up to this point, so trying to get more for that reason. All right, got a few cards here. One for Franz Anwander, who was killed August 13th, 1944 at Fortress of Soviet. Yeah, that's why I bought this card. So, for those of you who don't know, a Soviet is the site of one of the most interesting stories from World War One. Admittedly, I haven't done the research to see how much truth is actually in it, but the way that this story goes is that the Germans during World War One shelled a Soviet fortress with poison gas, and they expected, the Russians didn't have a ton of gas masks, so they figured they'd be able to take the fortress pretty easily. And as they prepared to make their way into the fortress, 100 or several hundred dying Russian soldiers with blood literally streaming, out of their mouths and eyes and things, charged out of the fortress and completely broke the German assault. As if a wave of dead men had come to attack them. And it's immortalized in a Sabaton song, which is pretty good if you've never heard it. It's one of my favorites of theirs, actually. But yeah, I've never seen a death card tied to the fighting at a Soviet during World War One. During World War II or World War I, so I was very excited to see this. And it looks like he has something on the side of his cap there. Is that an Edelweiss? Maybe? Oh yeah, Gebirgsjäger Trooper. Duh, I'm blind apparently. But yeah, super neat card. Next one we have here is for Franz Wallner, who was an Oberjäger in a Gebirgsjäger regiment, who fell on August 2nd, 1943 at Lake Ladoga. So I've gotten a lot of death cards over the years for guys killed in the fighting there. Lake Ladoga and Lake Ilmen. That was pretty heavy fighting. So probably if I can pull a death card for him, he'll be tied to a unit that I already have cards for, which will be nice. And last one for that envelope is for August Baumgartner, who fell on April 1945 at the age of 18. Nice HCOM back in there. All right. Got another nice stack of cards. So we have a card here for Josef Sporer, who's an Obergefreiter and Waffenmeistergehilfe, which I believe would be like a weapons master helper, so like a quartermaster's helper in an infantry regiment, who died May 13th, 1942 in Africa. So we got another North African card there. Oh yeah, this is neat. So this is photo cards. Somebody's added a photo. Instead of having it printed by the printer, they just cut out an actual photo and put it there. And we have the larger copy that I'm assuming they actually made the smaller ones off of, which is pretty neat. This is for Jacob Vendelin Piro, who's a Gefreiter in a Grenadier Regiment, bearer of the Wound Badge, the Crimean Shield, and the Romanian Honor Medal, who was killed October 2nd east of Khodorov, it looks like. Or was wounded October 2nd outside of Khodorov, and then... Oh, interesting. Is this Broken? I think Broken's printed. So this card was actually printed December 17th. That's very cool. I don't think I've ever seen a printing date on a card before. But yeah, super neat. Definitely look forward to doing research on that one. Then we also have the card here for Friedrich Sturm, as we can see, who was an Obergefreiter and fell on August 22nd, 1944 at the Flugplatz at Iasi in Romania. So pretty neat there. Unfortunately, it looks like this one came out of an album, so the back's... Yeah, I don't think this photo was glued there yet. It doesn't match. But yeah, it looks like it's ripped out of an album at some point. And the last card here from that envelope is for Georg Schramm, who was a Gefreiter in a Panzer Aufklärerabteilung, who fell on May 21st, 1941 in Greece. Don't see cards for Greece very often, so that was definitely a neat find, especially with the Panzer wrap there. And actually, I pulled out my jeweler loop to take a closer look here, and I believe that Georg's card is a reprint. Yeah, I've been doing this for a long time, and I've found some fake cards over the years. I don't think I've ever found one for just, I mean, granted, this is a desirable card, but it's not like a Knight's Crosswind or SS, which is usually when I find it's fake. Huh. I'll have to post this on the forum later. Yeah, for those of you who don't know, there is an ongoing post that's actually pinned over at the War Relics forum where I've been posting fake cards. I've been identifying those. That's definitely a maybe an interesting addition for sure. Moving on here. The other cards in the envelope did look good though, because I ran and checked those as well. Alrighty. So we have the death card here. Oh, it's actually got a real photo pasted in. This is an SS card for Lorenz Schadel, who fell on December 8th, 1942 in the East. It's kind of a neat front plate. I don't think I've seen that one before. Yeah, I feel so paranoid now. I did just check that one as well. That one is real. Whether the SS photo was part of the card originally or was added to inflate the value, I don't know. We'll have to find that out when I do the research. Moving on to Fridolin Moulins here, who's a Gefreiter in a Gebirgsjäger regiment, who in the heavy fighting in the East died on August 31st, 1944 at the age of 19. And we have a nice chasm back in there. Yeah, this one's got a sales invoice as well. And this is the card of Johann Kleinhaus, or Kleinhans, the Oberfreiter in a Gebirgsjäger regiment, bearer of the Iron Cross Second Class, the Assault Badge, the Eastern Front Medal, veteran of the campaign in Russia and Finland, who fell on September 6, 1944 in non-conf, which I believe is hand-to-hand combat, on the Icemere front, so in Finland. So interesting. So he was killed hand-to-hand fighting in Finland. That's a pretty neat card. You don't see that called out on death cards very often. Usually they're a bit vague. So I'm guessing that probably his commanding officer wrote a letter back to his family and explained what had happened. Another sales invoice. So the first one that we have here is for Gefreiter Heinrich Haushofer, who's a alumni of a seminary, actually. So it looks like he was going into the priesthood. He was a battalion Funker in a Panzer regiment, who was bearer of the Iron Cross Second Class, the Close Combat Class, the Panzer Assault Badge, the Wound Badge, who on August 20th, 1944, southwest of Shaolin in Lithuania, died from shrapnel at the age of 20. Wow. That is a great card there. So not only was this guy in the seminary trained to be a priest, he ends up either getting drafted or joining the military and racks up a pretty impressive list of awards there, and then is killed August 1944 by shrapnel. And like I said, you don't see the cause of death on death cards from World War II very often, so always very neat to see. And the other card in that envelope was for Erwin Zachman, who fell on October 22nd, 1944, in Romanter in Ostprussia. You can see he's wearing a tropical uniform there. All right, so we have the card here of Franz Riedel von Roding, who died in the summer of 1946. I believe, okay, so I remember he was shot. Yeah, this was an interesting card that came up. So Franz here apparently was in a Russian POW camp, and while escaping said camp, he was shot. And I don't know what's more interesting, the fact the family chose to include that information on his death card, or the fact that presumably the Soviets actually informed them of how he had died and didn't just, lie about it. It's pretty unusual. If he was a Panzerjäger as well. So a very cool card. Definitely looking forward to doing research on that. All right, so we're down to the last two mailers of death cards, and then on to the non-World War related item. All right, so there's quite a few cards from a seller who does actually do research. Put that there, get my invoice list here. All right, so starting with the death card of Rupert Baumgartner, Obergefreiter in Artillery Regiment, buried the Iron Cross Second Class, Eastern Front Medal, in the Wound Badge, who died September 22nd, 1944, in a munitions wagon explosion at the age of 23. Very unusual, and unfortunately, it doesn't look like they were able to pull a unit for him. But yeah, still very unusual cause of death on that card there. And then we have a death card for Johann Peter Hens, who was an Obergefreiter in a Pioneer Battalion. We have a really nice biography card here, but it looks like he was killed on January 24th, 1945, after being heavily wounded. Yeah, pretty interesting card there. I like those biography cards. Definitely look forward to translating that one. All right, next up we have Arthur Schachner here, who is a Lieutenant and Company Führer in a Schutzen Regiment, who died in a field hospital in Kulm on August 4th, 1942. And he was a member of the 168th Infantry Division, per the seller's invoice there. Let's see, the next card we have here is for August Fleischmann, who is a Grenadier in a Grenadier Regiment, who's died on March 1st, 1943, from wounds that he received October 7th, 1942, at the age of 21, and he's buried in the cemetery in Kilu in Poland. But yeah, really nice outside photo here of August, one that you don't see very often, which is the reason I bought this. I like photos that are a bit unique on death cards. It's a really nice backplate, too. I quite like that one. And then we actually have a chaplain here. Ludwig Russ, who was a chaplain, and he was killed October 12th, 1943, after some kind of operation at a reserve hospital at the age of 31. So chaplains in the German army did not have an easy time of it. The German military, as you can imagine, the Nazis had a very complex relationship with Christianity in Germany, and it's a topic for its own video. But they made it very hard for chaplains to actually be appointed. They were actually only allowed in the Kriegsmarine and then in the Heer. If you were in the SS or the Luftwaffe, you were not allowed to serve as a chaplain, for obvious reasons. Now, granted, priests serving in the Luftwaffe could operate in like an unofficial fashion. So like if their commander said, hey, if you want to say mass today, that's cool. There'd be nothing stopping them there. There is a book on German chaplains I read a while ago, and very frustratingly, in the book, he mentions an apocryphal secondhand account he heard of an unofficial chaplain in the SS, and then proceeds to give no additional information about it, which I think would have been interesting. But yeah, super cool. You do not see chaplain cards very often. That is only the second one, I think, in my collection. So moving on here, we have Gustl Mosbauer, who's an Obergefreiter and I believe an officer's candidate in Infantry Regiment, and he was killed August 10th, 1944 in Lenkaliskaya. And again, we have a nice outdoor photo here, which is pretty neat. Here we have the card of Peter Fornek, who is a Schütze in an Infantry Regiment, who, while fighting the Soviet Army, died December 7th, 1941. So we have a nice, again, outdoor field photo here. He's wearing his helmet. Very neat. And then the front panel here, I don't think that's his grave. I think it's actually a grave photo they were just using as a backdrop on this card. It's a really neat photo, though. I don't think I've seen that one. And that's a very cool St. Michael backplate. I haven't seen that one before either. I know for the most part, most of my viewers care about the military information more than the technique, I guess, of the death cards and putting them together and everything. But I honestly, I get more excited sometimes for finding really unique backplates than I do for some of the information in the cards. Not that I don't care about the information, just I have so many death cards that when one does something a bit unique and stands out a little bit, it's always appreciated. So moving on here. This one's also going to have a sales invoice. And that's the same seller, so it also has some good information here as well. Alrighty, starting off here we have Karl Tyler, who is a Lieutenant and Company Commander in a Panzer Aufklärungsabteilung, buried the Iron Cross Second Class, and various other awards. And he died January 9th, 1944 near Kirovograd. And they don't have any information on his unit, but the interesting thing here is he was born in Madrid, Spain. It's kind of neat. And next card that we have here, we have the card for Anton and Heider Vogel. So Anton Vogel is an Obergefreiter in infantry regiment who fell in the east on November 23rd, 1941. And Heidor here, at least I think it's Heidor, was a Sanitäter Obergefreiter in infantry regiment, bearer of the War Merit Crosses and the Eastern Front Medal, who died on October 24th, 1943. And I believe Anton here, per the sales invoice, was a member of the 183rd Infantry Division. Next up, we have Leopold Stollenberger, who was killed February 15th, 1942 at Visaliki, and he was a member of Panzer Regiment 7, per the sales invoice. And his card is good. I feel like I'm paranoid now because the one from earlier. Next up, we have the card of Josef Weiland, who was an Obergefreiter in a Grenadier Regiment, bearer of the Iron Cross 2nd Class and the Demyansk Shield, which you don't see very often, who was killed fighting northwest of Vitebsk at the age of 24. So, apparently, per the seller, he was a member of the 290th Infantry Division and was killed in 1944 during the Battle of Vitebsk, which was part of Operation Bagration. Now, Vitebsk, the reason I picked this card up is because of Vitebsk. I started working on a war game for Vitebsk last year, or I think very end of last year, early this year, and I made a lot of progress, and I haven't touched it in months because I've been so busy. I'm eventually going to get there. We're going to do the Vitebsk war game at some point, just need to find time to work on it. Next up, we have Johann Vogel here, who was born October 23rd, 1905, fell January 26th, 1944, and died fighting bandits, or, partisan warfare. But what's interesting here is the use of the life and death runes. Actually, very odd juxtaposition with the runes and then the scene from the Passion there. But yeah, so the life and death runes, you see them a lot in official documentation, newspapers and things. You don't see them very often on death cards. Probably because it feels weird putting runes on a Christian prayer keepsake, but interesting nonetheless. Next up, we have Richard Trosch here, who is a lieutenant in artillery regiment who fell February 12th, 1944 in Russia. And according to the invoice here, he fell by Nikopol. And then we have the death card here of Doctor of Medicine Hans Weidmann, who was an assistant doctor in an artillery regiment, bearer of the Iron Cross 1st, 2nd Class, and the Silver Wound Badge, who fell February 28th, 1942, or was wounded February 28th, 1942, died, August 23rd, 1942, later on from his injuries, which is pretty interesting. So I've noticed this on a few cards now. I'm guessing, because that's exactly what's here, I'm guessing before people had the double-sided sleeves, they would put the name on this side because they wanted to see the photo. Kind of odd, but collectors are strange sometimes what they do. So next up here, we have Funker Alphonse Weidgans, who was an Obergefreiter in a Nachrichten battery, a theology student who died August 27th, 1944, after several years at the front. Or Terroristen Überfall. So terroristic accident, maybe? Invoice says he was killed by partisans in Normandy, France, actually, so just shortly after the invasion. And we have a very nice color backing here, too, which you don't see very often. Interesting imagery having the gladius in front of the cross there as well. I don't think I've seen that before. And the last card here is for Xavier and Johann Tremmel. So Xavier Tremmel is an Obergefreiter in a Pioneer Storm Battalion, bearer of the War Merit Cross with Swords, Eastern Front Medal, who fell on July 14th, 1943. And Johann Tremmel here was a Gefreiter Grenadier Regiment, fell February 4th, 1943, at the age of 32. And it looks like Xavier here was in the 81st Infantry Division, and Johann was in the 134th, which is pretty neat. All right, some cool cards there. We'll go to the last package. So like I said, this is not World War I or World War II related. I just thought it was neat. Alrighty. So we can see the Novik by Lieutenant A.P. Stair. And the seller put their business card in here. But yeah, the Novik and the part she played in the Russo-Japanese War, 1904, by Lieutenant A.P. Speer of the Imperial Russian Navy, translated by L.A.P. So, a couple months back, my buddy Readout Productions and I did a video talking about the 2nd Pacific Squadron in the Russo-Japanese War. And, you know, after we did that video, I was like, I wonder what from the war I could find on eBay. Not a lot beyond postcards and such, as it turns out, but I saw this book, and I was like, that's pretty neat, actually. So I'm definitely, if I remember correctly, this was actually a ship that was stationed in Port Arthur and wasn't actually part of the 2nd Pacific Squadron itself. But still, super neat book. Yeah, definitely looking forward to reading that at some point. But yeah, so we have a book there on the 2nd Pacific Squadron. We have our usual mess of death cards. And then, yeah, a whole bunch of photographs as well to go through. So definitely a good unboxing. And yeah, I think at this point we're mid-September, so I'm still buying stuff because I have a problem. But yeah, last year I did like a less formal like Christmas unboxing, so I'll probably do the same thing this year for December and put it in front of all the other unboxings that I have set up. So actually, you're probably going to see that video before you see this video, which is weird. So yeah, September of 2024, this is being filmed. It's probably not going to come out until I think like March or April with the current schedule, if I'm thinking about this correctly. So yeah, it's kind of crazy to think about. Anyway, I hope you guys all enjoyed the video. Please leave a comment down below. Love hearing from you. Thank you all for watching. Happy collecting, and I will see you all again very soon.